Discover the incredible truth. A janitor's hidden wisdom silenced a room at a blind date. Surprised, Charlie leaned back on his broom as he surveyed the faculty lounge, its polished wood and glass gleaming under the fluorescent lights. He caught sight of the students rushing past, their laptops clutched as if they were holding onto their futures. He felt a pang of doubt rippling through him. A janitor's life didn't make headlines, but what was fame to the warmth of knowing 1,000 names? Yet tonight, as he prepared to meet his niece's date, an ambitious lawyer, he felt an unsettling churn in his stomach. What would she think of him? A middle-aged man with a mop and a sweep, whose days were filled with the residue of other successes. He wiped his brow, trying to shake the thoughts away. College was a place of lofty dreams, ambition spiraling like ivy on brick. Charlie often found himself wondering if he was a servant to those dreams or a guardian to the spirits those walls once held. As Sarah walked in, her sharp suit cut through the cozy ambience like a blade. He swallowed hard, studying the way she immediately judged the space. Anxiety clawed at him. Beneath her poised exterior lay an uneasy tension, the tightness in her jaw and the way her lips curled over polished teeth. Did she see him as lesser? Did his mop and bucket reduce him to mere background noise in this new world? The night progressed in tense snippets of conversation before a heated argument flared among the guests about ambition and success. Charlie's heart raced, caught between the clutter of voices rising in indignation. He could feel how field-specific accolades tied everyone's worth into neat little boxes, each one more constricting than the last. Charlie's thoughts ricocheted from their lofty ideals to the humble truth of his life. Before he could grasp the moment, chaos danced in the air, and he found himself standing. "I once saved a family store from closing," he began, fingers trembling on the broomstick. "Not with money or big plans, but by gathering the community, just folks like you, and encouraging loyalty." He could feel the room freeze, the hopeful glances of the students turning to bewilderment. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As his voice weaved through the tension, he recognized the flickering fear in Sarah's eyes, a mirror of his own insecurities. She was scaling a mountain, and he was the quiet valley beneath, full of secrets and roots that held steady beneath their feet. What weight did success carry if it came at the cost of disconnection? For Charlie, dignity was nestled in the small tasks, a lesson that echoed among the clinking of glasses and hushed debates. But that realization twisted the knife deeper in Sarah. Her polished surface began to crack under the weight of Charlie's unexpected insight. She looked at him, her breath hitching, as though he had thrown wide a door she had forgotten existed. Was the pursuit of endless ambition worth losing sight of the people, the warmth of the community that embraced the modest and unassuming? And just as her mouth opened, seeking to voice a truth she hardly understood, yet instinctively craved, the air thickened around them. Moments hung quaking on the brink of revelation, silence snaring every heartbeat, a charged potential that felt electric. Charlie's heart pounded like a drum, and all eyes lingered in fractured anticipation, brimming with knowledge yet to be uncovered. The silence that followed seemed to stretch unreasonably, almost like a physical barrier filling the space between Charlie and Sarah. Each moment became a spotlight on their diverging realities, one of relentless pursuit and one of simple acceptance. Charlie could feel the whispers of judgment that hovered just out of reach, the weight of their yet unspoken thoughts pressing against his chest. Was he fooling himself? The confidence he had summoned felt fragile, and vulnerability skittered close to the surface of his resolve. He could sense the room's eyes still locked on him, catching the vulnerability of his confession. But even in the shadow of that doubt, a quiet fire ignited within him. He had dared to step beyond his role, not merely as a janitor, but a person with stories that mattered, moments that left a mark on the lives of others. That he focused on Sarah. Her expression shifted, uncertainty slowly morphing into contemplation. This was not just another family gathering anymore. It had morphed into a confrontation of ideas and identity. Her rigid posture softened as she subconsciously evaluated the validity of his words. Charlie could almost hear the gears of her mind turning, grappling with what he was offering, the notion that true success could mean fostering connection rather than accumulating accolades. "I never thought about it that way," she finally managed, her voice barely above a whisper yet charged with sincerity. The sounds around them dulled as if the walls were swallowing all the distractions, forcing their battered truths into the forefront. She hesitated, and the conflict within her played out silently, reflected in her shifting gaze. Realization broke over Charlie like dawn after a long night. The image of himself he had crafted over the years of the janitor, lost amidst the grandeur of achievement, was shattering. Perhaps he had something essential to contribute, something that transcended traditional success. A small flicker of courage ignited further in his mind. What if he allowed his voice to carry a little further, to disrupt not just their perceptions, but his own? "Look around," he gestured subtly, inviting her to take in the assembly gathered. "We're all chasing something, yet we overlook the very structure that holds our stories together." He paused, steadying himself, feeling the sheen of sweat form beneath his shirt. What if our real success lies in our ability to connect with each other? The bonds we create in the mundane are the very things that define us. He noticed the exchange of glances, students nodding almost imperceptibly. Charlie couldn't deny the surge of belief that coursed through him. It was as if clarity was washing over the room, stripping away pretensions and revealing raw, vulnerable truth. Yet, amidst that surge, a familiar unease returned, nagging like a low hum in the back of his mind. What was he truly asking for? Acceptance? Recognition? The notion of legitimacy? And fully captured in his pondering was the realization. If he took this new step forward, was he ready for the potential fallout? Would he face scorn or admiration for speaking a truth that others might not embrace? Just then, the air thickened once more, and Charlie noticed Sarah's expression hardening slightly, as though walling herself back. The moment felt precarious. Could he maintain this new path he was forging? Would the world that held respect for accomplishment swallow him whole if he dared to redefine success? The tension hung palpably as he prepared himself, hoping to ride this newfound momentum. Yet a disquieting sensation enveloped him, something at the edge of perception, lurking just out of view, waiting to strike at the most vulnerable moments. Could he withstand the scrutiny? The journey ahead suddenly felt daunting, but he took a deep breath, ready to step forward into the unknown. The room began to buzz back to life, a ripple of chatter reasserting itself, but that moment had shifted something profound within Charlie. Before he could contemplate further, Sarah's eyes locked with his again, sparking another round of questions that danced like fireflies in the air, beginning to illuminate answers he hadn't yet discovered. Would he dare to continue this exploration into his own depths, confronting the unspoken doubts that had long governed his actions? Only time would tell. The very foundation of his identity was shaken, but it was a shake he could embrace, a crucial one that might just lead him into the heart of who he truly could be. Charlie stood in the aftershock of his own words, the distant clatter of conversation no longer simply background noise, but a rising symphony of uncertainty and hope. He felt out of place, a figure woven from a fabric of vulnerability, yet bold in his challenge. Engaging Sarah had been instinctual, but now, the stakes unfolded before him like an intricate tapestry of potential. Where was this newfound courage leading him? As the collective murmur in the room crescendoed, Charlie felt an urge to retreat, to slip back into the role he had played for so long, the invisible caretaker of others' lives, the janitor. But this time, as he grasped at that thread of familiar discomfort, another feeling surged forth, a sense of obligation to embody the voice he had just given life to. He could not let the momentum fade. It would be a disservice not just to himself, but to the connections he had ignited, especially with Sarah. He had to find a way to harness this moment and step fully into the light that had threaded through his admission. Where had this strength been hiding all this time? He questioned it, not fully comprehending the force of his own vulnerability. Perhaps it had always lingered beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to break free. The desire to be understood, to foster genuine human connections, outweighed the paralyzing fear of judgment. Yet, In this very moment, fear twisted itself into something productive, a fire that compelled him to speak. Charlie's eyes darted back to Sarah. Her brow was furrowed, grappling with the implications of his assertion. "We're all so focused on climbing," he continued, his voice steadying as he discovered his footing once more, "that we forget to look to our side. The connections we build matter as much, if not more." He could see the flickers of understanding igniting within her, and in that instant, he recognized an invisible thread stretching between the two of them. It was a conversation that delved beneath their different realities, unearthing a shared human experience that transcended their perceived societal roles. The resistance she had been modeling began to thaw. I think you're right," she admitted slowly, her voice steadying as she drew strength from his conviction. "It's easy to get caught up in what everyone else thinks success looks like." Encouraged, Charlie's heart raced, and he felt a potent mix of excitement and trepidation. What if we redefine our success? What if it becomes less about what we achieve and more about who we are to each other? The room was shifting again. He sensed eyes on them, some filled with curiosity, others with judgment. Yet all were undoubtedly focused on this developing exchange. A push-pull dynamic flowed between them. He was no longer merely speaking, but rather fostering a shared exploration of identity. Was it their journeys converging in this significant moment? Envisioning that brought clarity. But even as connection blossomed, a sobering doubt crept in. What damage could come if they challenged the status quo? The very foundations of their lives could shift, either collapsing around them or lifting them into new realms of understanding. He could feel the weight of potential consequences settling heavily on his shoulders, a price for boldness. Charlie inhaled deeply. It was clear, this conversation needed to matter. He needed to take charge of his narrative. He looked at Sarah squarely. "Let us not just have this be a moment. Let us make it a movement." The implication of his words hung expectantly in the air, and their weight sunk into him just as profoundly. Was he ready to act on it? To transform this realization into something actionable, something meaningful? Because inside him, the truth was coming alive. It needed expression beyond this moment. His new path wasn't just about connections. It was also about accountability, for himself, and perhaps even for the world around him. As the buzzing room began to strain against his newfound resolve, anticipation coursed through him. Charlie was on the precipice of something, but would it be a leap forward or a spiral back into the shadows? Then Sarah leaned closer, her voice barely a whisper. "What do we do next?" And just like that, he felt the exhilarating rush of possibility unfurl, beckoning him into an unknown he was both terrified and excited to explore. Charlie's mind raced as Sarah's question lingered, each word igniting a cascade of potential pathways. What did he really want to do? The endless possibilities danced in front of him, but each choice bore its own weight. He could sense the collective breath of the room, caught in anticipation, as eyes followed their exchange like moths drawn to a flame. Fear, that familiar and invasive entity, flickered at the edges of his mind. But now it felt manageable, like a fire that could either destroy or illuminate. How he approached this moment could shape not just his future, but also the contours of the relationships around him. He had spent far too long being a passive observer, afraid to disturb the status quo. Now was the time to redefine his participation in life. Humility washed over him, an acknowledgement that this journey extended beyond his personal growth. For once, Charlie was not alone in his ambition. He had Sarah willing to step into the unknown beside him. The thought filled him with resolve. He straightened, channeling the strength he had found in their dialogue. "Let us set some ground rules," he proposed, his voice steady yet passionate. "What if we create a space here where everyone can share their truth? We need to break down those barriers, pretending we don't feel overwhelmed or lost." The words flowed from him as he envisioned the new kind of community, one where vulnerability reigned over bravado. Another voice, sharp and skeptical, cut through the air. "And how do you expect to encourage that type of openness? People are scared. You can't just demand authenticity." It was Mark, a figure entrenched in the corporate game, whose dismissive tone struck a nerve. Charlie felt the tension mount. This was more than just an exchange. It was a confrontation of ideologies. Questions danced unervingly in his mind. Did he have the ability to facilitate such a transformation? Would anyone really engage with this honest approach? Before he could respond, Sarah took a breath. Maybe you underestimate the power of connection, Mark, she interjected, a challenging edge in her voice. Sometimes, it just takes one person to initiate change. And Charlie's right. We desperately need space to be real. The slight nods around the room filled Charlie's chest with a warm rush. It wasn't just about his words anymore. It was about fostering a collective awakening. For too long, they had all been playing it safe, wearing masks that lent comfort but also perpetuated loneliness. Yes, Charlie affirmed, emboldened by Sarah's support. We can start with small circles, open discussions. Even if it's uncomfortable, I believe the discomfort will lead us to places we've been avoiding. He felt a burgeoning sense of empowerment not just from his words, but from their potential. This was no longer just about him taking a stand. It was about kindling a movement. Yet, as the room shifted in response, the looming shadows of doubt returned. What if no one showed up? What if their vulnerability led to more judgment rather than acceptance? What if the experiment failed, and he became just another voice swallowed by the din of indifference? Charlie fought against those fears, revisiting the warmth of curiosity that had anchored him just moments ago. It was time to put aside those nebulous what-ifs. It was a risk worth taking. Let us schedule a meeting next week, he suggested, grounding his thoughts into a tangible plan. We can start small. Anyone who wants to join can come. I think it will help us understand each other better. Silence engulfed the group, and for a fleeting moment, anticipation flickered like a candle in the dark. The strength of vulnerability pulled them toward the light, but the path was marked by uncertainty. Then Sarah turned to him, her eyes sparkling with an electrifying blend of fear and excitement. I'll be there, she said firmly. As Charlie absorbed her resolve, something shifted once more. A new bond was forming, the beginnings of something greater than self-discovery. But just as hope began to blaze, Charlie's heart stuttered at the thought of resistance when the moment arrived. Would he falter when it mattered most? Would the fear of rejection dim the fire they had just ignited? As a quivering thread of doubt coiled in his gut, he braced himself, sensing that the true test of his newfound strength loomed ahead. Charlie knew this chapter was just an overture. The real challenge awaited, and it would demand more than words. Next week, he murmured to himself, feeling the gravity of the commitment looming over him. Just then, the door swung open, catching the attention of everyone in the room. A stranger stepped in, and with them, an aura of uncertainty that would shake the very foundation of their conversation. What would they bring to the upheaval unfolding around him? Charlie's heart raced as the stranger stepped into the room, the abrupt entry sending tremors through the tightly knit atmosphere. The individual was an older man, clad in a tattered jacket that seemed to house the stories of his life. He stood silently for a moment, scanning the gathering with eyes that reflected both wisdom and weariness. In that instant, Charlie could feel the collective breath of the group hitch yet again, curiosity mingling with unease. What is your name? Charlie asked, breaking the thickening tension. The stranger seemed hesitant, as though the act of revealing himself was a monumental task. Yet there was something magnetic about his presence that pulled Charlie closer. Henry, he finally said, his voice raspy but firm. Been walking these halls for years. You're the first group I've seen like this. It's a brave endeavor, young man. Charlie was taken aback. The unusual compliment from a stranger felt like a spark igniting a flame within him. Before he could muster a response, Henry took a step forward, his gaze penetrating. I hear you want to create a space for the truth. You know that can be terrifying, don't you? The weight of those words settled over Charlie. Yes, it was terrifying. Yet, lying beneath that fear was an unshakable desire for authenticity. I do, he admitted, holding Henry's gaze. But it's something we all need. But he hesitated, well aware of the thin line between aspiration and insecurity. Henry seemed to understand, and he nodded slowly. Ask yourself, why do you need their truth, and why do they need to share it? Truth isn't just about vulnerability. It's about trust. You're asking them to bare themselves, to break the chains of silence they've wrapped around their hearts. The room held a breath, everyone seemingly captivated by the old man's presence and insights. Charlie swallowed hard. A weight settled on his shoulders. The exchange was taking on a new depth, rippling through him with raw intensity. This was more than just planning a meeting. This was about creating a sanctuary for open hearts amidst a world that often demanded armor. What if they don't show up? Or if they do, and it turns into a disaster? He asked, desperation creeping into his voice. The doubts swarmed within him like angry bees, stinging with each flicker of worry. Then you learn, Henry said, a faint smile brushing his lips. Failure and success are twins in the realm of growth. Embracing one means you're making space for the other. Don't think of it as a possible disaster. Think of it as the very foundation upon which your growth will stand. Every setback is a lesson. Inspired by Henry's words, Charlie found a sense of clarity. His voice grew stronger with each word. You're right. It's not just about me. It's about cultivating a safe atmosphere where each story matters. If nobody shows up, we'll keep trying, keep inviting honesty until we make it work. He could feel his own fear beginning to dissipate, replaced with a budding hope. The group around him shifted, nodding with newfound conviction. There was a sense that Henry's unexpected presence had acted as a catalyst, igniting a latent determination within each person there. Charlie glanced at Sarah, who looked on with admiration and anger amidst the storm of uncertainty. Henry stepped back and faced the group, his charisma unfurling like a banner in the wind. If you commit to this truth-seeking, understand that you will confront discomfort. You may even start to unearth parts of yourselves you didn't know existed. But that's where the magic happens. If you're willing to do it together, you're already halfway there. The implications of Henry's words sank deep within Charlie. It wasn't just about him diving into others' truths. It was about each of them willing to embark on a collective journey of discovery. Would they meet the challenge with open hearts, or would fear retract their spirits? Charlie, let us make a pact, Sarah suggested, breaking his reverie. Let us commit to showing up for each other not just in meetings, but in the messy reality of our lives. We all have stories that matter. Agreed, Charlie responded, the simple act grounding him more than he anticipated. But as the energy swelled in the room, a dissonant thought sliced through his newfound resolve. Would the collective commitment hold when the test of authenticity arrived? And what if they invited vulnerability only to be met with rejection? As their hands clasped together in silent agreement, Charlie sensed the storm brewing just beneath the surface, a harbinger of the real struggles to come, now imminent and undeniable. Suddenly, he heard a whisper within himself. This is only the beginning. Would he and his newfound band of truth-seekers rise to the occasion? Or would the truths they unearthed become chains that bound them further? The question loomed heavy, an unresolved note waiting to be played. Henry's presence lingered in Charlie's thoughts long after he left the room. The weight of their conversation gnawed at him, blending unease with inspiration. As the group began to disperse, Charlie found himself looking inward, wrestling with a tempest of emotions. How do I ensure this actually works? He pondered aloud, addressing Sarah, who lingered nearby. Her willingness to take part in the pact intrigued him, underscoring the bond they were beginning to forge beyond mere words. You need to be the example, Charlie, she replied softly, her eyes piercing through the haze of uncertainty clouding his mind. You have to lead with vulnerability yourself. If you want them to share, you have to show them it's okay to be real. A jolt of realization hit him. Vulnerability his own. Could he actually step into that space with his own uncertainties laid bare? The prospect terrified him, the scars of past insecurities ebbing to the surface. What if I tell them something personal and it backfires? The storm in Charlie's mind grew louder. He thought of the times he'd been open and felt dismissed or judged. Would history repeat itself? Then it's a lesson learned, Sarah answered, her confidence unwavering. Maybe it takes some time for trust to build, but what matters is that you made the first move. Open up, and they'll follow your lead. He absorbed her words, recognizing their promise. But was he really ready to share his truths with a group of relative strangers? Or were his fears about rejection too overwhelming? Charlie exhaled deeply, an action that held the weight of his decision. We start tomorrow, right? What do I even say? It needs to be genuine, he mumbled, almost to himself. Start with what you've been through. If it feels right, share your fears about this journey, she suggested, her voice reassuring. They'll connect with your honesty. You just need to be brave enough to take the leap. The night rolled in, and sleep eluded him. Lying in bed, Charlie replayed the discussion with Henry and contemplated Sarah's advice. Familiar anxieties swirled, each demanding his attention. What do I really want to say? Is my story worth sharing? He thought. Despite the chaos in his mind, a fragile determination began to crystallize. Maybe it was the encouragement from Sarah or the possibility of connection that Henry had ignited in him. He started to pen his thoughts, spilling words onto the page as if they were stepping stones leading him out of the darkness. He wrote about his childhood struggles, the feeling of being overshadowed by others, and the anger that had fueled his silence for so many years. As he continued, layers of his guardedness peeled away, exposing a narrative soaked in vulnerability. The morning sun rose, casting soft light on his realizations. He was ready to share, if only to begin the process of healing and authenticity within himself. Just moments before the meeting, Charlie paused outside the room, heart racing anew. "Breathe," he whispered to himself. Taking a deep breath, he gripped the handle. With the echoes of Henry's wisdom and Sarah's encouragement still resonating in his heart, he pushed the door open. The room was filled with faces eager for connection, some still shrouded in uncertainty. At that moment, he understood his role was both guide and participant, a bridge to a journey that belonged to everyone present, not just him. "Thank you all for being here," he began, voice steadier than he felt. "I'm nervous about what this will be, but I'm ready to share my story." As he embarked on his journey of authenticity, a shifting wind filled the room, rippling through the group, holding the promise of tomorrow. Little did he know, the real challenge and the true measure of his growth awaited just beyond that moment, waiting to test the strength of his revelations. Would vulnerability be enough to bind them together, or would it expose cracks that widened into abysses? Only time would tell, but one thing was certain: the pivotal moment had arrived. As Charlie stood there, facing the crowd with a mix of excitement and dread, he felt the air thicken with anticipation. His mouth dried, and the familiar grip of anxiety clawed at him. Yet, in that charged silence, a spark ignited within him. This wasn't just an exercise in sharing. It was an unfolding opportunity for growth, a chance to reshape his narrative. He took a step forward, allowing the moment to breathe. "Not long ago, I felt invisible," he began, surprising himself with the simplicity of the words. "There were times when I thought no one saw me, and I was okay with that. It protected me from judgment." He searched their faces, a few furrowed brows, some nodding slightly. It was a silent acknowledgement, a flicker of connection starting to illuminate the shadows of discomfort. Voices of encouragement rose within him as he continued. "In school, I was the quiet one, the kid in the back who had so many things to say, but felt the fear of being knocked down before having a chance." The warmth of their attention comforted him. Each sympathetic gaze became a small mountain he could climb. But over time, those fears morphed into anger, and that anger turned inward. "I built walls to hide behind, thinking it was protection." He paused to gauge their reactions. He noticed Sarah leaning forward, the unspoken solidarity palpable between them. She embodied the support he realized he craved. "What I learned is that those walls just isolated me further. It took someone like Henry to wake me up to the reality that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's a strength." With those words, Charlie felt a surge of power. Each individual in the room hosted their own struggles, and by revealing his vulnerabilities, he was paving the way for others. "Sharing this journey with all of you is scary," he admitted, allowing himself to still feel the tremor in his voice. "But I believe it's a risk worth taking. I want to be open and honest because that's what I hope can foster trust among us." The tension in the room was palpable, and the collective breaths seemed to synchronize with the rhythm of his heart. As he shared poignant snippets of his life, brief moments of light and dark, the group began to soften. Heads nodded, smiles appeared, and Charlie noticed the walls around him cracking. It was a shared vulnerability all around. The currency of connection was transforming the air. Just as the atmosphere transformed, so did Charlie's realization. As he waded through his narrative, a deeper understanding emerged. The act of sharing was not merely about his fears, but also about the strength it elicited in others to do the same. He was carving out a space where they could shed their own insecurities. When he concluded, a palpable silence enveloped them, reverberating with unspoken thoughts. The group seemed hesitant, teetering on the edge of vulnerability, just like he had. "Thank you for listening," Charlie finally said, feeling the weight of the room shift. I'd love to hear from each of you. What is your story? Anticipation swirled within him. Suddenly, this had become more than his story. It was a call to arms for everyone present to share too. But as he looked out, a gut instinct surged through him, a realization that perhaps some stories would be too painful to share, too raw to explore right now. Will the weight of those unshared stories create a chasm too wide to bridge? Charlie could feel the tension, questioning if they were truly ready to connect on such a profound level, or if fear would stifle the promise that had emerged. And just as he thought the conversation might unfold, a hesitant hand shot up at the back. A familiar face broke the silence, setting the stage for a revelation that could change everything. Charlie's heart raced as he turned to the familiar face in the back, a wave of recognition crashing over him. It was Tom, the janitor whose footsteps often echoed through the empty hallways where Charlie worked late into the night. Tom always wore a warm smile, but Charlie had never considered diving deeper into their interactions. Would he take this leap into vulnerability? I just wanted to say that I see you, Charlie. I see you every day. Tom's voice broke the tension. You might not realize it, but your quiet strength has inspired me. I worked hard to stay in the shadows of my own life, too. The room was still. All eyes turned towards Tom. Charlie hadn't expected such a profound statement from someone he barely knew. An unexpected gift. Growing up, I felt like I was just a backdrop to everyone else's life, Tom continued, his voice gaining volume. But I learned that even in my role, I could impact lives. Each trash can I empty, each floor I mop, I do it thinking of the people who use this space. I want them to feel valued. It didn't always feel that way, you know? Tom's admission peeled back layers not just for himself, but for everyone present. In that moment, Charlie felt the weight of his own insecurities start to lift. Here was a man who deemed each act of service as valuable, each moment an opportunity for connection, a perspective shift he desperately needed. Charlie thought of the walls he had built, his feelings of worthlessness. But how do you stay motivated? He asked, leaning into the vulnerability of the moment. Because each story matters, my friend, Tom replied, his eyes glimmering. It's easy to forget your own importance in the grand scheme. But we all play a part, even if it seems small. It's about embracing who you are and making the most of it. Charlie felt an inkling of understanding wash over him, a clarity breaking through the fog of self-doubt. Would he, too, be able to embrace his role as meaningfully as Tom did? As the conversation shifted to include more storytellers, Charlie sensed a distinct energy in the room. Sarah shared her tale of struggle as an artist fighting against rejection. Others divulged their silently held fears, revealing varying levels of strength and vulnerability. With each shared story, Charlie felt a gradual lifting of the collective burden and the blossoming of a more profound trust. Yet doubt lurked beneath the joyous surface. Would this newfound connection be sustainable? Would the strength they drew from each other last beyond this moment? As thoughts flitted through his mind, Charlie instinctively glanced at Tom, who simply nodded, as if to assure him that these fears were natural. As more voices joined the chorus of vulnerability, a nagging concern tugged at Charlie. What if not everyone could leave the shadow of insecurity behind? What if tomorrow came, bringing them back into the roles society had cast them in? Charlie had discovered something vital. Sharing one's story was just the beginning. It was the step that opened the door to deeper exploration, but maintaining those connections would require ongoing courage. Would they be willing to walk through that door together? Then Sarah spoke again, her voice firm but poignant. Maybe it's not just about us sharing, but about intertwining our journeys so they are no longer solitary. How do we rebuild ourselves? The question lingered heavily in the air, an open-ended challenge knotted with uncertainty. All eyes turned to Charlie, who understood the weight of her inquiry and the potential it held for transformation, both for himself and for those around him. He felt the expectations settle upon him. Now they were all waiting for his thoughts on sustaining this momentum. Would he step into this role of a leader in their collective journey of vulnerability? The moment stretched tightly, and Charlie took a deep breath, ready to respond. Just as he began to absorb the collective hope saturating the room, a sudden noise from outside broke their reverie, a loud crash that sent a ripple of anxiety through Charlie's chest. What lay beyond that door could change everything once more, and maybe this time, it would challenge them in ways they never anticipated. Would they embrace the tumult or retreat into the silence that once defined them? Charlie's heart pounded in response to the loud crash that had shattered the moment. He felt a surge of adrenaline, his body tense as he scanned the room, searching for a sign of what lay beyond the door. The collective silence was suffocating, each face a canvas of uncertainty. "Should we check it out?" someone murmured, but Charlie's gaze remained fixed on Tom, whose expression didn't waver. A newfound determination settled within him, sparked by the wisdom of the janitor who had opened a door to understanding. Before he could think twice, Charlie stood. "Let us see what it is," he said, his voice steadier than he felt. With no plan other than curiosity, he stepped outside, the others trailing behind him like a hesitant shadow as they emerged into the hallway. They discovered a toppled cart filled with cleaning supplies, scattering bottles and mops like fallen soldiers. Charlie felt an odd mixture of relief and disappointment. The external chaos mirrored the internal turmoil he still battled. What awaited him on the other side of the door had not been a moment of great peril, but a reminder of the disarray he felt in his life. "Can I help?" he asked, kneeling to gather the fallen items. The word surprised him. In a fleeting moment, he had chosen action over avoidance. It was a small, insignificant task, yet it filled a void, tethering him to the present. Tom crouched beside him and began picking up the supplies. "You know," he said, "every time we face the mess, it's an opportunity to clear space for something new." Charlie absorbed Tom's words, feeling their weight settle deep within him. "It sounds so simple," he said, a hint of disbelief coloring his voice. "Life often is, until we complicate it," Tom replied, grinning as he tossed a broom into the cart. "The trick is to start somewhere, anywhere, and just keep moving." With Tom beside him, Charlie faced his own disarray, his flickering ambition and crippling self-doubt coiling tightly. As they finished restacking the cart, Charlie caught the gaze of his peers observing him from down the hall. They were waiting, expecting him to lead. He took a deep breath, feeling the support of Tom reflected in their eyes. "Everyone, I know we've just encountered a mess," he called out, standing tall. "But let us use this moment. Let us dig deeper, share more, rebuild what we've only begun. We can find a way to ensure our stories intertwine. I won't pretend to have the answers, but together, we can navigate through the challenges we face." A ripple of agreement resonated through the small crowd. Each person started to step closer, their initial anxieties ebbing away, replaced by tentative curiosity. Charlie felt a shift within himself, a light igniting in the corners of his mind. "Let us talk about our struggles and how we can support one another," Sarah suggested. "Let us not wait for another noise, another crash, to pull us together." As the group reconvened, Charlie felt a surge of momentum. The weight of their vulnerability transformed into a mutual strength, carving a path through the uncertainty he had long avoided. He realized this experience was not just about sharing stories. It was about learning from one another, accepting the storm, and finding clarity amid chaos. Yet even as he experienced this spark, the question about tomorrow loomed larger than ever. What if this newfound connection shattered under the same pressures of life that had held them all captive? Would they all scatter back to their corners as doubt crept in once more? The moment felt frail, as if teetering on the edge of transformation and dissolution. Charlie glanced at Tom, whose gentle assurance bobbed quietly beneath the noise of gathering determination. "Are we ready to embrace our next steps?" Charlie asked, looking around the room, searching for a signal of commitment. In that instant, another crash resonated from outside, a reminder of unpredictability. Charlie's heartbeat quickened again. Would they embrace the chaos and push forward into the unknown together, or would they retreat, clutching their fears? He could feel the collective breath held in anticipation, drawing them all closer to what awaited just beyond their current understanding. The defining moment was near. He could sense it. Would they have the courage to forge ahead? The weeks that followed that pivotal evening felt like a whirlwind of discovery and connection for Charlie. Every meeting ignited new conversations, stories untold began to weave together into a tapestry of shared human experience. The connection he had sought for so long solidified, as he found himself increasingly comfortable in his role of facilitator, one who nurtured space for others to share their truths. Charlie felt an unmistakable growth within himself. Gone were the days when he hid behind a mop and bucket, an invisible guardian of the halls. In their place stood a man with a voice, one who had learned that authenticity could bridge gaps once thought insurmountable. He had challenged his own preconceived notions about success and began to embrace a broader perspective. His peers were not just students, board members, or ambitious lawyers. They were individuals with depths unseen, layers that demanded exploration. Every week, "We're building something meaningful, Charlie," Sarah remarked one afternoon as they sifted through feedback from their group sessions. "You're transforming the way we engage with one another. It starts with you being bold and vulnerable, and look where it's taking us." There was awe in her voice that ignited a fierce pride within him. He had the power to create a culture of honesty and acceptance. Charlie's heart surged as he anticipated their upcoming showcase, a culmination of their shared journey and invitation for others to join this evolving movement of connection. He realized he had transformed personally and professionally, becoming not just a janitor, but a community architect. The Thursday sessions now drew larger crowds driven by curiosity and the promise of safety and authenticity. Each voice echoed like a resonance of hope, and each contribution reinforced the notion that stories mattered. From the sidelines, he often caught Tom observing, nodding in approval as Charlie led discussions. A strong camaraderie had developed, and they formed a bond rooted in mutual respect. Tom had transcended merely being a reflection of Charlie's fears. He was now a confidant and supporter in redefining what it meant to be influential, even within the confines of their perceived limitations. During one of their sessions, Charlie bravely shared a moment of vulnerability that encapsulated his entire journey, a story from his childhood that had shaped his understanding of worth, yet had also chained him to past stigmas. For years, he began with a steady breath. "I believed being quiet was my only survival tactic, but all it did was diminish my light." As he narrated, the tension in the room dissipated. His peers saw him anew, a real person, etched with the marks of resilience. The ensuing silence felt different, charged with a recognition of struggle and triumph. Finally, someone spoke. "Charlie, thank you for saying that. I think we all hold pieces of similar stories. This room feels lighter because we can share." And in that instant, Charlie felt a shift so profound it rippled through him. Here stood a testimony to the power of vulnerability. The very essence he once feared had become his greatest asset. Gone was the nagging doubt that had loomed. He had forged connections that mattered significantly not just to him, but to everyone present. As the showcase approached, anticipation tumbled within him. In the days prior, he felt a rush of determination combining with anxiety, a familiar yet exciting cocktail of emotions. What if this time, they reached even more hearts? To unravel deeper, he encouraged others in their community to share the journey they had embarked upon. This was transformation realized in tangible, measurable steps. When the day finally arrived, Charlie stood before an engaged audience, surrounded by voices that blossomed like wildflowers against the backdrop of his original apprehensions. They shared stories of failure, dreams deferred, but more importantly, tales of connection forged in honesty. As the final participant concluded their account, the room erupted in applause and acknowledgement, not only of the vulnerability exhibited, but the courage it took to engage fully with one another. In that moment, Charlie felt a solid confidence, an established presence. The recognition and validation washed over him like a wave. He had proven that success was not confined to accolades, but rooted deeply in the relationships formed through shared experiences. Looking around the room, he understood the truth of his transformation. No longer was he merely the janitor. He had become something greater, an agent of change in his own right, surrounded by a community continually striving for connection. In essence, Charlie had not just achieved recognition. He had reached a state of personal fulfillment, satisfaction, and competence that had lifted him from the shadows. In that spotlight of revelation, he stood tall and proud, the whispers of doubt silenced by the chorus of shared connections that reverberated around him. As he left the room filled with warmth and pride, Charlie understood the journey had just begun, not only for himself, but for all those he had inspired to embrace their own stories and vulnerabilities. You need to subscribe now to capture the unfolding of these transformative journeys. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help others find this story of personal growth. Comment below with your reactions and theories about Charlie's journey. Let's keep this conversation alive. Don't wait even one more second to share this impactful conclusion with at least 5 friends who need to hear about this kind of transformation.